Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. So what I got going on today, this is my Hugelkultur bed. Up underneath here there's a ton of wood and limbs and cardboard and just a whole bunch of stuff that will break down in the soil. And the idea behind a Hugelkultur bed is not only will the wood and all that rot down and make more fertile soil, but it will also help to hopefully retain moisture. And I don't get a lot of my sprinklers don't reach this point very well, if at all. I had planted some seeds in here, but it doesn't appear as though any of that has actually grown up. It looks like all I've got in here is just weeds. So what I'm going to do, in the interest of this being more of a no-till space, I'm going to go through, I'm going to weed whack all this down. I'm going to leave the plant material there. I'm going to layer a layer of dirt over the top, and then a layer of compost over that, and then I'm going to go ahead and start planting in this. This is an old swing, like a backyard swing, and it broke, just started coming apart and rotting out, but the frame itself was still good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put tomatoes in here and then run strings from this down in a Florida weave to support my tomatoes. Alright, with that being said, let me get to work. A couple things I want to show you. So basically I've weed whacked this down to right at ground level, and then you'll notice that all my logs here are starting to rot down real good. Alright, now when I put these logs down here to basically contain the bed and show me where it was at, I knew that this was going to happen. That was actually my intention. One of the reasons I left the bark on is because it makes wood rot down quicker, because bugs can get up underneath the bark and start to eating at the wood. Had I not done it, it might have lasted a little bit longer, but these are pine logs and they will rot down and they will get eaten. I'm sure I've got some termites up in here. Actually, I think I found some back in there. And that's okay, I'm well away from the house, or any other house for that matter, so they can munch away, break this down to nothing, and when I'm done, it'll just be more nutrients put back into the soil. Now, when you go to weed whacking, for this purpose, I go all the way down to the ground, but I always try and pay attention to which way my debris is spraying. I want to make sure that all that debris is trying to stay as much as possible into the bed, so that all that green material now becomes basically green fertilizer for my bed. So now I've got a small dirt pile over here. I'm going to take that, put it over the top of all of this, and then I'm going to go get some compost and cover the rest up with compost. So this dirt here is not really a necessary component of what I'm doing. This is more or less just a way to get rid of some of the dirt that I had. I had pulled this out of one of my other garden beds, so it should be decent dirt. But I needed somewhere to put it, so I threw it in a pile over there. Now I'm putting it in here. And then I'll cover that up with some more compost. Now I'm probably going to get weeds back in here. I'm sure at least some of what I ground up had weed seed in it. But that's okay. I'll have to pull some weeds. I can deal with that. But this was decent dirt, like I said, so it's a nice addition to this garden bed. Alright, so now let me go get some compost. Alright, so now, what have I got here? I've got a bunch of dead weeds with their roots down in the soil. Those roots will start to rot down and provide food for the microbes and so on. On top of that, I've got some fairly fertile dirt that I had dug up from another garden, maybe ½ inch of that. And now I'm guessing I'll have about 2 inches, 1.5 inches of compost spread out all over the garden. So let me just spread all this out, and then we'll look at what we're going to plant in here. Now, I was reading somewhere about how to use compost. In a lot of places, and here, you know, around my garden, I have dug a lot of that compost down into the soil. Now, there's 2 schools of thought on that. One says, basically, you shouldn't do that because that's not what nature does. When nature makes compost, what it does is basically just has debris fall on the ground, and that debris rots down and turns into good compost, which in turn enriches the soil. So I have always kind of dug it into the soil and tried to make the soil have more matter inside the soil. Now, I have heard that people like David the Good, who, if you haven't checked out David the Good, by all means check him out. He's got some really wise advice, he's got some research, he knows what he's doing. But he had talked about here in Florida with the sandy soil, the problem is you keep putting compost after compost after compost, and all of that just washes down into the soil, eventually disappears, and you know, you can never put enough compost in the soil to keep it really fertile. So there is that side of things. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure which one is the best, but I will tell you that over time, by incorporating it into the soil, it seems to me as though it actually gets down in there and makes my soil more like a semi-clay soil, so I have more structure to the soil. Beds where I've continued to, you know, stir the compost in and stir the compost in, I can actually turn them into a clump of dirt, which, you know, with a sandy soil you just hardly can do that. So I think that has been very effective. But in this bed, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it on the top and continue to just let that wash down into the soil. As more and more rain comes, basically that'll turn into compost tea, and all of that stuff, as it gets smaller and smaller and breaks down more and more, will get down into the soil, and hopefully that will do the trick. So we're going to try it out here, kind of see what happens, make this into a true no-dig or no-till kind of pot. Not no-dig, I'm going to have to dig some to put plants in it. So this is going to give me about a 2-inch layer of compost that is pretty well broken down. I mean, it probably could have broken down a couple more months and been okay. But it's still really nice, decent compost. It's got charcoal in it. It's got grass clippings in it. It's got kitchen waste in it. It's got just about everything you can make compost out of in this compost. So should be really rich, really nutritious stuff. And then as it breaks down further and starts to wash down into the soil, the chunks that are left of like of my pine needles and so on will provide somewhat of a layer of mulch over the top. So I think it'll work out really well. Let me get this put together. We'll move on to the next step. Alright, so I got my tomato plants planted all up in here. I've got, what is it, Rutgers, Roma, and one purple Cherokee. They're pretty close together, but the plan is going to be that I'm going to take a string, run the string down to the plant, bring them up, and try and make them a single vine tomato. Alright, so that hopefully what I'll end up with is not a lot of vegetation and mostly just tomatoes. But we'll see how that works out. But either way, this project is done. This bed is prepped. All I got to do now is water it in real good and wait for it to grow. Alright, so thanks once again for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe. Let me know what you think. But most importantly, grow some. Get some tomatoes grown in your yard right now is a perfect time to start your tomatoes. All right, thanks once again. Y'all take care and come back and see me.